You yourself have worked as a life coach. Is your Madonna character right that only control freaks deserve to inherit the earth?
I'm not going to stake a claim to the rightness of that, but I will say that Madonna is the one character in the play that I definitely relate to the most. I've never been certified as a life coach, but for a while I've existed in many artistic communities, and I've always sort of been a really organized, rigid person when it comes to my performance practice, and So yeah, I've always found myself writing people's press releases for them, and writing people's bios, and someone would in my songwriting community, someone would make an album, and I'd be like, everyone needs to hear this album. What are you gonna do? And then people would be like, I don't know. I'm gonna play some shows. I'm gonna sell the record at some shows. And I'd be like, no, that's not good enough. We have to let everyone know. And I would constantly take the reins of people's stuff and try to nudge them in productive, proactive directions. And so I ended up just sort of calling that life coaching, and I put it on my website and had a few clients and help people make their to-do lists and get themselves organized. And I did some good, I have to say, I did some good work. I got some people to really bust through some blockages in their life. But that said, it's not something I want to do too much of in the future.
Well, I will not demand that you work for everyone on the show for free. So I'm curious, Ian Fleischman, who's the character who, is it fair to say that he's sort of the stand-in for you in these shows and stuff?
It's funny because that's the obvious idea, is that Ian's the me character. I identify much more with the Madonna character than I do with the other characters in the show. Ian's sort of evil me. Ian's sort of because this is the second in a trilogy of plays about this character. Ian's sort of an ancillary character in this play, but he's the main character in the first and the third. And he's sort of me with a much less likable personality. He's me if I made all the wrong decisions and had all the wrong attitudes and sort of took everything into negative, dark places. And so this, writing these plays is pretty cathartic for me, because it really is, it clarifies for me what I don't want to become. And in the first play, I performed that role, and I wrote it for myself. And in this play, the incredible comic actor, Cola Scola is playing Ian Fleischman, and brings a totally weirder, darker, very spooky internal, edge to the character. It's really exciting.
So why is he your dark side in this play? Why? Because he doesn't seem to be doing anything.
That's why he's my dark
evil.
side.
That's why.
Because he doesn't do anything.
Okay.
I know. I feel I know that when left to my own devices, I could easily become an incredibly lazy, resource-sucking consumer, and I live in mortal fear of that. Honestly, when I graduated college, my intention was to become a full-time activist, and I was going to move to New York for 1 year and get art out of my system. And then I kept ending that because people kept coming to my shows, and then I started getting reviews, and I've always felt really conflicted about making art in the first place. And I've always, every day I ask myself if this is productive use of my life and time, considering how broken the universe is. And so obviously this is the preoccupation of my work. And even, making work with political themes is not the same as making political work. Working politically is not the same as talking about politics. And so even a show like this, which is about revolution and about making the world a better place, I have no idea whether this is actually making the world a better place. And I have a certain epistemological panic about that. Ian is my way of working through those notions and allowing other people to work through them, and allowing other people to work through them vicariously through me. And hopefully people leave these plays questioning their relationship to power, questioning the decisions they've made, wondering if they're doing enough to heal a really broken universe.
I saw an earlier version of Material World back in 2010, and I noticed that you added a scene where Ian, the character we were just talking about, is watching the Arab Spring play out on the news. And he's bowled over by the fact that a nonviolent uprising can actually work. and he sings the song that we played at the beginning of this segment. And actually, let's hear a few seconds of it again now. It's about how if you want a revolution, all you got to do is hang out.
Revolution, hang out, hang out. Revolution, hang out, hang out. Revolution, hang out. If you want a revolution, all you gotta do is hang out.
So, have the social uprisings of the past year changed the way you've thought about politics in the course of working on this show? Because from what you were just saying, it sounds like you do see a pretty definitive gap between doing something for change and not doing anything.
Right.
And obviously the idea of a revolution hangout, I mean, is like, it's like sort of a parody of something like the Occupy movement, right? Or potentially of any civil disobedience movement.
It's a parody, but it's also a celebration, I think. Like, I mean, it's been so fascinating writing a play about revolution, and then suddenly revolutions start happening. You know, when I first started doing the research for this show, I talked to a lot of the show is, based on my grandmother's childhood, and the childhoods of her and her two sisters, and I interviewed all of them. I interviewed two of them to prepare for the show, and I asked both my grandmother and her older sister, when did you expect the revolution to happen when you were a child? And both of them said, any second. And I was really moved and compelled by that there was a time in, like, recent American history, and this is, like, in 2010, so that there was a time in recent American history when revolution seemed possible. And then suddenly revolutions started happening, and they started seeming possible, and that ethos started to exist again, and I didn't think that was possible. So, I think that we're all, especially after it sort of, like, the weather got cold and Occupy stopped being, like, as public and obvious and visible a force. I think a lot of us who want the world to be better are just sort of trying to make sense of the universe now that the revolutionary impulse of the past year is starting to filter into the practical world. And we're looking at Egypt and we're like, oh God, what's actually going to happen here? And you look at the Occupy movement and how it's still so powerful and diffuse, but in this very sort of, like, below the lens sort of way, and has sort of, like, become synonymous in some level with, like, general activism. Like, everything's just like occupy this and occupy that and occupy this and occupy that. And it makes you wonder, and I don't have a clear answer for this, like, what is the role of hanging out in change? What is the role of getting a bunch of people together in a public space? In what way does that make a difference? In what way does that just make the illusion of difference? I'm haunted by that, and I don't have any clear answers.
You said, I'm not sure how much you were serious or joking, just before the show today, that you and the people you were working with, thought that nobody was going to like this show.
Well, I didn't think anyone was going to like this show.
Or that you didn't think anyone was going to like the show, and so you've been really amazed by the great reviews that it's been getting and so on. So why did you think that people weren't going to like this particular one?
Because it's a show about a family of socialist Jews in the 1920s who live in a house with Madonna and Britney Spears.
Not everybody likes that. It's not everyone's favorite thing in the world.
Well, I always thought it was just too weird that people would think that I was just being dumb or being silly. I thought that people would either think it was completely frivolous and stupid, or that people would think that it was, like, too brainy and political and boring. And which obviously, like, I was worried that people were thinking two completely different things about the same show. But, we've been turning people away at the door every night. The house is completely packed. It has this, and people seem just, here's one thing. This is the first show that I've done that I haven't been in. So I'm, like, lurking in the shadows in every show, like, behind the seats, just, like, watching things. And, people have, like, this experience, and it's really moving. And people, after the show, everyone's talking about how the world can be better, and how what is their own emotional stake in that. And people are, like, crying, and it's weird. That's for me, because I've never experienced that before. So it's very rewarding to have had such low expectations, and then to see everything kind of succeeding pretty well.
So we just have time for one more very quick question. But Material World, as you said, is part 2 of a trilogy. The first part was your Hanukkah-themed play, You Will Experience Silence.
We're calling it a erotic Hanukkah comedy.
The erotic Hanukkah comedy, excuse me. But do you know what part 3 is going to look like?
Yeah, in part 3, Ian is going to visit his relatives who are settlers in the West Bank. And that's all I can say right now. But the whole thing's been leading up to that.
Excellent. All right. Well, looking forward to it. So Dan, thank you so much for joining us again.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. Thanks, Marissa.